Okay, so today I have my dad with me, and he is a mental health counselor here in Pocatello. Him and my mom have raised 10 kids and over 40 foster kids, and they're my personal counselors and also just wonderful people. But he's going to help
Did you
us
say
answer.
we raised them or they raised us?
Well, probably a little bit of both.
They raised us. I think. We're
um,
still being raised.
Yeah. So today we are going to answer the question of when to give our kid a smartphone. So, what do you think, Dad?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's not an answer for it. So how about that?
All right. Okay, we'll see you later.
Now, the challenge today is everything has changed so much. So there's so many children with smartphones, and I hear parents that say to me all the time, "Well, we've got to be able to get a hold of them. We've got to be able to keep connected with them," and yet it's kind of like turning your child loose driving a car when they're tiny and have the ability to handle something like that is almost impossible. And I think we're giving more and more choices to children that haven't matured enough to the ability of handling those kind of choices yet. And so that's one of the challenges. So one of the things rather than answer that question, I was just teaching a parenting class yesterday, and one of the concepts that we taught in our parenting class is what we call the boundary tree. You've heard of the boundary tree. And so I jotted it down just real quick on a piece of paper, but I don't even know if it can be seen. Can that be seen? But the idea here is that as parents, we have these children that are within our what I call the boundary tree, and out here on the outside of this tree there are boundaries. These are no choices. So, for example, a child should not be able to choose to get their appendix out when they're 3 years old, or in our case, we lived on a busy street where semis came up and down the street, and we would say, okay, it's a no choice to go play in the front yard because it's not safe, So, and the children would go, I want to go play in the front yard. I want to go play in the front yard, but it wasn't safe there. So there are things in our families, in every family, that they have to decide where's the boundary, what are the no choices. In our family growing up, no put downs was a big thing. You don't get to put somebody else down. That was a no choice. Or hitting or
So, how do
something.
people decide what no choices?
Yeah, every family has to decide what that is for their family.
Okay.
But within this tree, then there are choices, 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 choices. And Renee and I would always say, if it doesn't maim or kill them, make sure they experience those choices, because we grow so much from mistakes and serious mistakes we make. So within this tree, so if we were to say, okay, here's a tree that I want to say that 0 to 3 years old, that's a tiny little tree that child has the ability to make choices, and maybe the 3 to 6 year old child has a tree that's this big, and maybe the 6 to 9 year old child has a tree that's this big, and the tree keeps growing and growing and growing as the child matures and progresses. And so we always joke in our family that we have some children that are 20 years old, but they have a 10-year-old tree. And so because of some of the choices they made, their tree gets smaller, so their choices become smaller. Now we have maybe a 15-year-old that can have a 25-year-old tree because he or she has made some really healthy choices, so their tree gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Can you even see that in there? I don't know. So the idea is that the tree grows bigger and bigger and bigger as we make healthier choices. So now I'm going to go back to your cell phone. Does a child really have the ability to handle that cell phone? Most children do not have the ability to handle a smartphone.
Sure.
And we're putting in their hands all kinds of modern technology that they don't even have the ability to handle. Now, does that mean that every child shouldn't have a smartphone? No. And if that child has the ability and their tree is big enough to handle that, then and they're trained and properly taught of how to handle that incredible phone, then that might be a healthy thing. And if we find out that, oh, whoops, my child's spending too much time on the phone, or maybe they're looking at pornographic things on the phone, or they're doing inappropriate things on the phone, they're chatting or whatever, and that tree's going to become smaller, we may have to say, oh, you're not quite ready for that. We'll try again tomorrow, try again next month, try again next year. So the idea is that you want to teach the children all the time to practice governing themselves. Now, having said that, my research would tell me that most children do not have the ability to handle all the technicalities or the technical things of a smartphone. And yet, so there's certain kind of phones we could get them to just keep in touch with them, which is nice for today. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
any difference.
like a flip phone or
Yeah, yeah.
Gab phone. I've heard of.
Yeah. And the reality of it is, I mean, we all know that there's some pretty serious, horrible things that happen over the telephone, and so then we put it in the palm of someone's hand and then wonder why they didn't do well dealing with that.
Awesome. What do you feel like is our responsibility to teach as far as what's within the phone and what's too far to teach?
Well, one of my favorite things to say is, that I like to tell people is, when you talk about discipline, the word discipline itself means to teach. And so ways to teach, I mean, if a child knows that there can be some incredibly inappropriate things that will come in on this machine, in advance. In fact, I often would tell you guys, it's not if you see pornography, it's when you see pornography. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle that? You have 1 second. You have 1 second to make a choice and to decide how I'm going to handle this, because it's going to happen in our society. Most young people are going to see some form of pornography.
And the majority of kids are too scared to talk to their parents. And then the parents don't think that's actually happening to their kids.
Right. My child would never do that. My child would never look at pornography. But we're finding out as you're doing your interviews that most kids are spending way more time on the phone, and it's a very secretive way to handle and hide things. And so incredibly important, if your child is going to have some type of cell phone earlier in life, that you have some program set up where you're checking in and you knowing what's on that phone. Although a lot of it can be erased nowadays.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
So if I had my druthers, what would I have? No, if I had my way, I would wait later and later and later if kids could have phones later in life, because until their mind is developed well enough to handle these type of things that you have on a telephone.
Awesome. I love that.
So the idea is, as a family system, though, what can I handle? And it isn't just with the phone; it's with anything. Can I handle this? Can I handle driving the car? Can I handle babysitting? Can I handle walking across the street? What can I handle? And every child and every family is going to have to decide differently about that.
And sometimes we'll have to go up and down the tree depending on their age, right? And
sometimes it moves every hour.
Yeah. Depending on
how big a trust level.
What you can.
And as you well know, most kids learn more from their mistakes, and adults, we're all overgrown kids, learn more from their mistakes than they do from successes.
Sure.
In life.
Yeah. Definitely.
So we don't want it to damage or destroy, but we do want them to know this is a possibility, that there are some grand things that can happen from this incredible machine, and there's some horrible things that can happen.
Vulnerable with them about the dangers that are actually on there, but also protecting them, but teaching them the right way, because when they do turn 18, no matter what, they're going to get a phone, and if they're completely protected, they won't know how to deal with that. But all good.
So it goes back to the old concept that we would often teach as well. Do you want to be in charge of yourself, or do you need me to be in charge of you?
No.
And the child will help me define whether they can be in charge of themselves or whether they need me to be in charge of themselves. So I often would say, if a child wasn't doing their chores or doing something that takes responsibility, I say, okay, do you need me to be in charge of you, or can you handle that yourself?
Awesome.
And you would say, no, Dad.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Right. Because most kids want to be in charge of themselves and have their parents' trust.
Most people, in general, they want to be in charge of themselves, and that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to do. That means I have the ability to handle the situation.
Awesome.
I don't know if we have more time for this, but one of the things I would say is, it's like driving. If I can live and obey all the traffic laws, I can drive from here to Florida. If I can't drive across the street without getting into an accident. So the obedience to certain laws or to certain things with the cell phone or with the car, whatever we're doing, is going to make a big difference with how big my tree is or how much responsibility I can handle and I have. And each child gets to define what that level is.
What that looks like for them.
With their parents.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, thanks so much, Dad. Okay. Please let us know if you have any questions about this concept, or if you have any questions in general about parenting, mental health. He does a lot of stuff with anxiety and depression. But we'll keep posting these questions, but we'd love to go off of different questions you have as well.